Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Let's Brew. This is going to be a new series on the channel where I get a card either randomly or chosen by the community to try to brew around, not necessarily as fast as possible, but in a quick way where I examine the card, I think over what could go with it well, what kind of deck it could fit into, and then proceed to brew around it with any card that I see fit. So this series starts out with Pit Keeper, and Pit Keeper says that when he enters the battlefield, if you have 4 or more creatures in your graveyard, return a creature to your hand. So I initially or instantly was thinking, well, let's just throw it in a sort of dredge-esque deck that is going to give us a lot of creatures in the yard to then trigger this often. And if we're going to be pitching a lot of things in the graveyard, I start to think what can kind of go along with it well. So you'll see some of the choices I make here, some of the cards that I choose to pick, and I'll kind of go over and explain exactly why I chose those cards and why I think they are a good fit for this deck. So go ahead and check that out. So I started off by looking around for just cards that maybe put things into my graveyard or is going to easily make me be able to pitch things in there with some other alternative value along with it. And one of the cards I came across is a popular card called Grizzly Salvage, and this lets me reveal the top 5 cards in my library, put a creature or a land card from among them into my hand, and then put the rest into the graveyard. So this way I can kind of pick and choose what exactly goes into the yard. If I want to, let's say, keep a delve creature or something like that in my hand, I can then make sure I do that without losing it. Cards like Thought Scour, sometimes you put some cards into your yard and you're a little bit disappointed with exactly what it is that you mill over. So I thought that Grizzly Salvage was giving me a good option to mill things over as well as choose what I want to put in my hand. And of course, its land ability allows me to make sure that I'm not running low on mana at any point by just simply milling over all the lands. So you guys saw that I just added a few cards to the list for this deck. The first being Stitcher Supplier. Stitcher Supplier, obviously, it mills over the top 3 cards in my library when it comes into play, as well as when it dies. So that's another 6 cards that I'll easily be able to pitch into the yard. I also put in Embodiment of Agonies. It's a creature that's going to grow based on the different CMC costs in my yard. So when I'm milling over a bunch of different cards, Embodiment of Agonies can be one of the cards that I choose to put into my hand from Grizzly Salvage, for example. And I can then swing in with a nice flying Death Touch creature that should be, probably around a 5/5, 6/6 perhaps when he enters the battlefield. I also chose to add Gurmag Angler because since I'm pitching so many cards into the yard already, Gurmag Angler is probably going to be able to come out as a 1 mana 5/5, and it comes off as a little bit of a nombo because I want cards in my graveyard with Embodiment of Agonies, and I'm going to be exiling cards with Gurmag Angler for the delve. However, I do think that just having the variety of different threats in my hand to choose what I want to do, because Gurmag Angler can come out very quickly in this deck, And sometimes Embodiment of Agonies might not be that big depending on what I have in my yard at the time. And of course, I could always pitch lands or just some things that I don't need in the yard with Gurmag Angler on the battlefield. So that's why I chose to add him to the deck as well. So I added the cards Corpse Churn and Creeping Chill to the deck list as well. Corpse Churn is going to not only allow me to mill over some more cards into my yard, but it'll also allow me to, say, pull in that Embodiment of Agonies or Gurmag Angler from the graveyard into my hand. So if I accidentally mill them over with some of the other cards, it's not going to be that big of a deal because I know I'll be able to get it back. And then Creeping Chill, a very popular card in Dredge, obviously, is in there just as 4 cards that when I mill them over, they just do 3 damage. I gain 3 life. Can't be countered by the opponent, so it's just a great add to the deck. So I went ahead and added the card Flair. It's a creature that is going to deal combat damage, and it's going to let me mill over some more cards into my library as well. And if Delirium is active, which it very well could be in this deck, he becomes a 4/4 instead. So I thought he'd just be a good addition to the deck. And then I went ahead and added some of our removal package, which includes Eliminate, which is a new card from Core Set 2021. That'll allow us to take care of most creatures and planeswalkers in the modern format. Added a few Assassin's Trophies because it can hit any target that we want to, pretty much, and it's going to be able to handle just about anything, as well as Fatal Push, just as some more additional creature removal so that we can take care of whatever threats our opponent has for us. So I then went ahead and added our land base to the deck. It's very simple. We're in Golgari colors, so we added ourselves our Verdant Catacombs, our fetch lands. We added some fast lands, Blooming Marsh, and we added the shock lands, Overgrown Tomb, as well as a few basic swamps and forests. We don't need anything too fancy here. We're not running 3 colors. It's only 2. So we should be fine as far as our mana fixing goes. And our deck primarily has very low cost creatures and spells. So we're only running 18 lands in this deck. I feel that that's going to be enough. And between some of the cards that we have, like Grizzly Salvage, will allow ourselves to make sure that we keep those lands in our hand that we need in order to play the spells that we want to play. So finally, coming to the end of the video, we add in Glowspore Shaman, which again is just going to allow us to mill over some cards into our yard to get the synergy of the deck rolling. We're going to also use it as just a 3/1 body on the battlefield. And I also added Fiend Artisan to the deck from Ikoria. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in the graveyard. So since we're going to be milling over a lot of creatures into the yard, this is just an easy add. It's going to allow us to have another big body on the battlefield. if we don't run into our Gurmag Angler or our Embodiment of Agonies. So those were just a couple of easy additions to the deck. So after making a few alterations to the number of cards that we have, we ended up with our finished deck at 60 cards. In this series, I don't go over the sideboard because I feel like the sideboard is something that each individual player can mess around with for their individual metas. But here we have the Pit Keeper deck completed. Ended up being a little bit over $400 with just a lot of graveyard synergy, throwing things into the yard, possibly delving things, casting Embodiment of Agonies, be a large body on the battlefield. Lots of removal with Assassin's Trophy, and Eliminate, some fantastic synergies in the deck with Grizzly Salvage and Corpse Churn, and a very simple land package. If you would have done anything differently for this list, please let me know. And if you have any ideas of how I could have changed this or could have possibly fit Pit Keeper into a different style deck, let me know down below. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy. The deck list, if you're interested in playing this, will be in the description down below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. It helps us out a ton. And if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. Make sure you follow us on all our social media @Coast Lizards, and have a fantastic day.